I've always been interested in history, so I thought I'd make it a bit of a historical journey.
The story came to me one morning. I woke up with this picture in my mind.
As an idea, just was there already.
It's a timeline on a tragedy.
I don't know why, but a jukebox came into my head.
And the inspiration from that.
Got a million thoughts racing through my head. Characters calling from books unread. Every moment could be the start of something new, straight from the heart. Oh, I'd like to write a story, don't know where to begin. Got all these words inside me, just trying to break free. I'd like to write a story, make these pages come alive. Every word's got glory. When you finally take that dive, I'd like to write a story now.
William's legs were aching. His feet, in their flimsy leather boots, were blistered and bloody as he continued plodding along the stony trackway. He was bone weary. His journey from his small Hampshire village to Canterbury had been long and arduous, but the physical torments were nothing compared to the anguished thoughts that swirled around his head and ambushed his dreams at night. He had committed a mortal sin and hoped that with a pilgrimage to the sainted Thomas Becket, his immortal soul might be assuaged and he would not spend eternity in the flames of hell. He had slept in barns and under hedgerows, and one night some merchants had taken pity on him and allowed him to join them in an inn. But having completed his self-imposed penance, he was now heading back to his home. He had decided, as he gazed upon the magnificent tomb of the murdered saint, that he would return and face the consequences of his actions. He had many friends in the village, and he would throw himself on their mercy, and Father Ignatius, although strict, was compassionate, and might give him a fair hearing and a just punishment, and becoming a penitent pilgrim might stand him in good stead. As he walked westward,
he saw a figure in the distance coming towards him. The gait was familiar, and soon to his astonishment, he recognized the mop-headed youthful features of his best friend, Tom the miller's son. Tom waved his arms in the air and rushed towards him. The two men embraced, both talking at once. "What are you doing here? And thank the Lord I have found you at last." "Where are you going, Tom?" inquired William, still in shock at seeing his friend. "I've come to find you, you dunderhead," replied Tom, hitting William hard on the arm.
"You always said you wanted to go on a pilgrimage, and then when you suddenly disappeared, I thought you might make good your intention. So I decided to travel to Canterbury in the hope of finding you. And here you are."
"God be praised. Have you come to take me back for trial? Am I to be hung? What are you talking about? Surely you know why I ran away. I killed Edith."
William had been coerced by his father to marry Edith, a distant cousin of his. No one could have known that her bonny looks had concealed a sharp tongue and an evil temper. She had made the few years of their marriage a misery for him, and one night she had flown into such a rage he had feared for his life, and when she rushed towards him with a kitchen knife, William had pushed her hard. She had collapsed, hitting her head on the cauldron suspended within the fireplace. William had looked at her ashen face and limp body, and panic-stricken had bundled up his few possessions and a blanket and fled their cottage.
To William's surprise, Tom guffawed, saying, "You didn't kill Edith. The day after you left, she was up and about with a huge bruise on her face, shouting how you tried to murder her, but no one took any notice. She was such a shrew, and everyone thought you probably fought back for once. But she was furious that you had left, especially as no one knew where you had gone."
William felt his knees buckle, and without Tom's assistance would have fallen to the ground. "So, she's still alive. I didn't kill her." The relief was tempered by the fact that he would have to return to his vengeful wife. "Well," Tom hesitated.
"I'm afraid I've got some bad news, William. Just after you left, plague came to our village."
"We think it was brought by a peddler. Edith was one of the first to succumb. She's gone, along with Father Ignatius and most of the other villagers, my parents and sister included. Before he died, my father gave me a bag of coins and begged me to leave. I was hoping I could find you and asked if you would come to the north with me, which I've been told is free of the pestilence. We could make a fresh start. What say you? Are you ready for another journey?"
The first thing I remember was a falling sensation, dropping through the air, and then a jolt as the soft bubble in which I was travelling fell onto a more resistant surface, a surface which yielded immediately, facilitating a downward drift until the bubble came to rest. Then there was nothing except for an occasional flurry that left the bubble rocking in the place where it lay until the movement subsided. I stayed inside the small space enclosed within the soft bubble wall. It was the only place I could remember, and I felt safe there. But then the hunger began to gnaw at me, and finally became so insistent it overwhelmed my fear. Pushing against the bubble wall, I tore it apart and found myself surrounded by noise and other creatures. Some were far larger than me, their surface covered with small coloured scales, and they moved suddenly, darting after food or escaping from a predator that was chasing after them. Other creatures were less shapely, with wriggling, elongated bodies, whilst others had legs and hard outer shells. I realised I'd begun a journey, but felt constrained by the body in which I'd emerged into this new world. It was necessary to break free, and I felt an involuntary urge to push, expanding until my shell split apart and was left lying where it had fallen. My hunger drove me to eat, my body taking in the water in which I was immersed and then expelling it in a jet that thrust me forward until I found some hard, irregular shapes I could hide amongst. A small creature was suspended in front of me, and I felt my lower jaw shoot out to grab it and chewed hungrily on what it had caught. And for a long while, I paused my journey, feeding and growing, molting from my outer shell and emerging bigger and more powerful each time it happened. Life became easier until I began to feel an increasingly persistent sense that something was lacking, that I was destined for more. There was a new hunger that needed feeding, and I realized instinctively that I needed to move on. I found myself moving nearer and nearer to the edge of my world and breathing in air instead of the liquid in which I've been previously living. Climbing up a green stem, I found a new world. It felt warmer, and the light lasted longer. My body began to change. My head, legs and wings pushed out of my skin, my legs hardening and wings expanding. I had no conscious knowledge of flight, but my muscles had an innate understanding, and my wings began to beat. My first flight was pathetic, weak, but the beating grew stronger, and I soared into the air. And then I saw him. Veined wings like cloudy stained glass windows, zigging and zagging, stopping and starting as he chased and caught his prey. His body was long and beautiful, and mine surrendered as he clasped the back of my head. I curled my abdomen, reaching for his seeds. Together we formed a wheel, rolling back to where our journey began. And then, like my mother before me, I flew across the water, releasing my eggs, enjoying the freedom and warmth of the sun, and waiting for my journey to end.
At the time of their betrothal in February 1981, he was 32. She was 19. They'd met on only 12 previous occasions. Were these two in love or simply victims of circumstance? Days before the wedding, the bride discovered a gold bracelet commissioned by her fiancé as a long service award to a tenacious third party. Diana seethed. Charles stood his ground. Primacy was maintained. After the honeymoon, he gravitated towards old friends while she focused on becoming a global icon. The poignant image of her sitting alone at the Taj Mahal spoke volumes about their joyless marriage. Diana was happy to visit AIDS victims, minefields and homeless people, but preferred to keep a distance from cantankerous Charles. Official separation came in December 1992 following infidelities on both sides. Biographers fed the flames. Morton's explosive work was described as a Molotov cocktail hurled at the House of Windsor, while Dimbleby portrayed Philip as an abrasive bully and Diana as a hired womb. In 1995, millions watched the princess talk candidly about Camilla, bulimia, suicidal thoughts and future plans. She said, pointedly, the royal household regarded her as a threat which was extinguished less than 2 years later. Fast forward to Paris. 1997, Dodi had purchased an engagement ring. Rumours were rife. Diana was 36 and arguably the most famous female in the world. Minutes after midnight, they embarked on their final journey together. The previous year, a former mistress of HRH, whilst detained under the Mental Health Act, fell from a very high window, resulting in catastrophic injuries. Another shocking tragedy was about to unfold. 10 months before the crash, Diana revealed plans to assassinate her. Driver Henry Paul was an informant for French intelligence. He had 13 bank accounts totaling £102,000 and 2,000 francs in his wallet when he died. The Americans were monitoring Diana's calls. The chauffeur showed no signs of impairment, but blood samples later identified excess alcohol in his system, plus sufficient carbon monoxide to topple a horse. How did it get there? Why did the Mercedes enter the tunnel? Dodi's apartment lay in a different direction. Tunnels provide secrecy, particularly if 14 CCTV cameras are looking the other way. Why did photographer and key witness James Adamson burn himself to death in a BMW after claiming he was there in the tunnel driving a white Fiat Uno when the crash occurred? How come the bodyguard remembered everything except the final 4 minutes? Why did former intelligence operative Richard Tomlinson provide a sworn statement to French investigators implicating MI6. What caused witness Jack Firestone to conclude that the crash had been orchestrated? Read his remarkable book, Chasing Diana. Several people testified that a white Fiat Uno collided with the Mercedes. The jury decided Diana and Dodie were unlawfully killed. Was the driver drunk or just another pawn in the game? French authorities retain a 6,000-page file detailing their findings. It's locked away until 2082. Ask yourself why.
There once was a man. Now that is a very ordinary start to what is perhaps an extraordinary story. Indeed, there was nothing extraordinary about this man, except perhaps in one way. Men love all sorts of things: women, other men, fame, fortune. This man loved the sun. Every day he would wake and greet the sun with a loud hello, and the sun would return the greeting with a warm hug. And every evening he would walk to the beach, look out to the west over the sea and wave the sun goodbye. The sun, tired at the end of a long journey, would return the greeting with a lazy wink before it sank beneath the horizon. "Good night, my love. Will I see you in the morning?" the man asked every dusk. "Oh yes, my love," the sun replied, "for there is no tomorrow without me." "I define your tomorrow. How can there be a dawn without a sunrise?" "Get your rest, and I will see you in the morning. I must rest myself now too, for though this journey has been tiring, I must continue my journey now alone, so that I might see you again on the morrow." And the man returned home with a smile, for he knew he would see his love again. One evening, as the sun was setting, the man asked his usual question. "Good night, my love. Will I see you in the morning?" It was, you see, a matter of routine at this point, merely a rhetorical question, a daily ritual of farewell. But to his surprise, the sun hesitated. "What is it?" he asked, afraid. "Why do you hesitate?" The sun sighed. "My love, I did not want to cause you alarm or sadness, but I fear I must. I have seen and heard things on my journey today, things I foolishly thought were consigned to days past. And while I will be here in the morning, for what is the morning without me, I no longer know if you will be here to see me. Forgive my sentiment. Perhaps it is nothing. In all likelihood, you will see me in the morning." And the sun dipped below the horizon, leaving the man in the dark. He tried to sleep, really he tried. But the night was cold and full of stars.
I finally actually properly sat down yesterday afternoon after sort of messing about all week and said, right, come on. So I'm sat there looking out the window across the road to the pub, the Sankpur, and I don't know why, but a jukebox came into my head, and that's kind of what set it off. And where the rest came from, I don't know really. "Let me have a jukebox in heaven," he said, on his way to being dead. "Of course, my love," I said, "it's yours. And an infinite sack of 10p's to feed it, please." "Noted," I said. "Lots of them," I said. "To play on repeat," I said. He lets out a slow breath, his fingers moving, in time already. "Not just yet," he said, to death, and turned to me, and heard the beat of love, loud in me, loud as hell on earth and loud as hell in heaven. Loud our soundtrack blasts farewell.
Another bank holiday at Victoria Station. Dread. I'm attempting to board the 10:45 to Seaford. Late again, naturally. The platform is teeming with irate passengers, their frustrations etched across their faces. What happened to the romance of rail travel, I wonder? The excitement of steam and travels afar. I find a seat settling in opposite two stern guys, one with a tattooed snake on his neck, his hands bulky and bruised, already diving into their packed lunches. An elderly lady drops into the space beside me, muttering about her arthritis. Just perfect, I thought, closing my eyes against the fluorescent glare of the carriage lights. The gentle rocking of the train lulls me into an unexpected slumber, and suddenly I'm transported to another era. The carriage transforms around me, polished wood panels gleam, and plush velvet seats replace the warm fabric beneath me. The smell of burning coal as the steam drifts in via a small opening vent. Ladies in bustled dresses and gentlemen in morning coats fill the compartment, all properly attired for their journey to the coast. Two distinguished gentlemen sit opposite me, their refined manner at odds with their familiar faces. Something about them reminds me of my modern-day travelling companions, though I can't quite place why. A well-dressed lady beside me speaks passionately about the plight of the poor and the state of the nation, her cultured tones carrying the same undertone of complaint as my elderly neighbour from the present. A uniformed conductor moves through the carriage offering a tea from a brass-wheeled trolley. The whole scene breathes elegance and civility. A choreographed dance of Victorian values. Through the windows, unspoiled countryside rolls past, unmarred by modern development. When we arrive in Seaford, it's a village celebration. The mayor stands proudly on the platform, ready to welcome the first passengers from London on this new railway line. Two gentlemen, companions, invite me to tour their newly built coastal residence, while the lady beside me insists I visit her soon-to-open tea room. The air buzzes with possibility and progress. A sharp jolt snaps me back to reality. "Oi, mate, we're here." The tattooed man grins at me. "Been asleep the whole way, mate, you have?" "Thanks. Still groggy. Where are you headed?" "Lewis Prison." Our plainclothes officer grunts. "He's been done for GBH. Have a nice holiday." The elderly lady beside me adjusts her glasses with a knowing smile, clicks her tongue. Funny how history repeats itself. Just different tattoos. She winks and disappears into the crowd. Stepping onto the platform, I check my phone. 3 missed calls and a bunch of notifications. Were those truly the good old days? Or do we simply polish our memories until they shine? Maybe those Victorian gents were dreaming of a golden age while steaming towards an uncertain future.
It's September in Svalbard, north of Norway. A colony of Arctic terns huddle together on the archipelago. The silence descends on the colony. It's time for the dread. The dread, a signal to the colony to ready themselves for the journey. The great migration to the Antarctic, a journey of some 20,000 miles in search of more daylight. It's September on a beach, 3
miles west
Tonga.
of Sangati. A hush descends on the motley group of people, tightly packed into a flimsy rubber vessel made for a maximum of 20, but tonight filled with at least 50 souls desperate to reach a new home on the opposite side of the English Channel. They sit in silence, filled with dread, a dread of the unknown, an unknown albeit preferable to the known they have left behind. A man arrives with an outboard motor and attaches it to the rear of the boat. He recruits a volunteer to pilot the journey, and together with his colleague, they give the boat a shove as the engine bursts into life, spewing clouds of smoke, shattering the silence.
Suddenly a turn takes to the air and the entire colony follows. Some of the later fledglings lag behind until they gain their confidence, while the colony circles briefly in readiness for the longest non-stop journey in the natural world. Soon the flock breaks up into smaller groups of 10 and 20 and they are on their way. A journey of about 40 days lies ahead. Soon the boat chugs along.
The overload causing it to behave like a giant waterbed when its passengers shift position to be more comfortable. Behind, the cliffs of the coastline near Sangate is an inferior, less inviting version of its English counterpart. Ahead, the full harvest moon lights up the seemingly endless desolation of the channel's choppy waters. Fear, foreboding, anxiety, sorrow, regret pervade the atmosphere on board. The volunteer pilot is confident he is navigating the correct path. From time to time, he consults his compass while making reassuring announcements to the rest of the passengers.
First stop for the turns is the middle of the North Atlantic, a vital opportunity to store fuel in readiness for the long flight ahead. They can stay in this vicinity for up to a month if necessary, while they search for and where possible raid vast stocks of zooplankton and fish before heading towards northwest Africa. These creatures face hazards both natural and human-made on their 40-day miraculous journey. Those chicks who manage to escape predators such as foxes or gulls at the nesting site now also face the effects of overfishing and rising tides due to climate change. As they sleep later in their flight, half their brains will shut down while the other half helps them navigate their route. The Arctic tern is known for its elegance in flight, as it glides rather than flies, utilizing air currents. Ahmed closes his eyes. Maybe he can
snatch some sleep before the journey reaches its most difficult period, midway across the channel. An impossibility. His head swirls with images of his journey from Syria to Sangati. Following the indelible memory of family members lost in the rubble remains of his home after a bombing raid, he recalls his first boat journey almost 3 months ago, when the dinghy deflated off the island of Lesbos. How grateful they were to the locals who came to their rescue as they clung to the side of the floating rubber raft. The screams of the woman who frantically held her baby aloft as the rescuers swam to help her. The body of a man, his lungs bursting with seawater, washed up on the shoreline.
Some terns are happy to go it alone, but most prefer to fly in groups of between 10 and 20. The terns may well make more than 30 return flights in their lifetime, from their birthplace in the Arctic to the Antarctic and back again. This could be the equivalent of 2 return trips to the moon throughout their lives. There are two main routes to their usual Antarctic summer temporary home on the ice caps of the Weddell Sea. Some take the route close to the west coast of South America, while others stay near the east coast of Africa. Even so, they all arrive together at their destination, where they spend the months from November to April. The passengers on board the flimsy dinghy cling
to each other as the swells grow in intensity and size, some in the front of the vessel already drenched. There is nervous laughter as people cling tightly to their bags containing prized possessions, documents, funds, treasured photos, and anything which might tell their life story. Ahmed knows he should be full of hope, but events leading to this journey continue to haunt him. Masked gunmen in civvies controlling his neighborhood, while Assad's snipers pick them out from behind ruins recently bombed. Ahmed remembers how people were forced to stay in their dwellings, which might be raided at any moment. He recalls the terror of doors bursting open and being forced up against a wall as gunmen searched their dwellings. Riddled with guilt, he thinks about his elderly mother, who was left behind with his sister to pick up the pieces and confront the nightmare. He had decided to escape so he wouldn't be forced to join Assad's army at gunpoint. Having had the privilege and good fortune to qualify as an engineer at Damascus University, his mother and sister urged him to leave and take his chances in Europe. Maybe one day we can all be together again, were the last words he heard his mother say.
As they regularly seek to spend their time in summer months, the terns see more daylight than any other creature on Earth. When April arrives, the colony prepares itself for the return journey to the north. The breeding season awaits, and many are already in their original couples. Many loners begin the search to find a suitable partner, and perhaps even make the long flight together. The journey north is navigated in an S shape as they negotiate favourable winds and currents. When they finally arrive back in places like Svalbard in northern Norway, it's usually to the same nesting site where they spend the next few months before repeating the journey cycle. A ghostly fog and an insinuating anxiety stealthily envelop the boat and its passengers.
The journey is increasingly fraught with multiple dangers. Ahmed contemplates the metaphorical fog that obscures the future awaiting him in the land ahead, a future no longer in his own hands. Stories from the UK reveal a time spent in limbo, where he will await his fate determined by an alien bureaucracy. He thinks about his best friend Khaled, who, 2 months ago, managed to find his way to Kent, where he was employed illegally as a gardener by a wealthy, retired couple. They were not interested in the usual formalities of employment, such as the necessary documents. Another story he heard was of a young man from Damascus who was set upon by a gang of local youths in South London and was still in a coma in hospital. The chill of the Channel night air has penetrated the passengers to the bone, subduing them into a state of silence and almost suspended animation.
It isn't long before the famous white cliffs loom like a spectral image through the fog. Are they tempting those aboard the approaching vessel, or taunting them? Ahmed isn't sure.
Got a million thoughts racing through my head. Characters calling from books unread. Every moment could be the start of something new, straight from the heart. Oh, I'd like to write a story, don't know where to begin. Got all these words inside me, just trying to break free. I'd like to write a story, make these pages come alive. Every word's got glory when you finally take that dive. I'd like to write a story now, I know where to begin. I'm ready